So recently I found myself replaying the remastered version of Halo 2 on the MCC. Campaign only for pretty obvious reasons. And I couldn't help but completely soy out over how fucking gorgeous the cutscenes still are over a decade later. But then it got me thinking, why is it that I often play Halo 2 with the remastered graphics turned on, but not when I play Halo Combat Evolved, which also got a remaster? I then immediately remembered why. It's because the Combat Evolved remaster looks abysmal, and so I've decided that I'm going to talk about it for a bit. Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary was the first quote-unquote game released by 343. Christ, talk about a rough start. And then they followed it up with Halo 4 only a year later, good lord. Now, I may be being a little unfair here, as 343 weren't technically the people who made this game. They just produced it. The same way that they didn't make Halo Wars 2 and really need to stop being praised for it. Instead, the remaster was handled by two companies called Saber Interactive and Certain Affinity. So the reason why this game is technically considered a remaster and not a full remake is because it still uses a lot of the old bones from the original game, just sort of Ship of Theseus with modern assets for the visuals. Unfortunately, almost all of said assets weren't actually created for this remaster. No, instead this game was made so cheaply that about half of the weapon and character models in this game are just reused or slightly altered assets from previous Halo games. This game had two whole studios working on it, by the way. Because of this, some of the NPCs look completely scuffed, because they're basically putting a bunch of skin on a skeleton that was originally designed for something that looked very different to the design that is now being placed over it. I mean, just look at what they did to the jackals. Gave them fuckers scoliosis. So essentially, this game is one half asset flip and one half actual remaster. Another problem with them flipping assets from previous games is that they took assets from more than one game. There's assets from Halo 3 and Halo Reach scattered around in this game, and they really don't mesh well with each other. Or the overall game itself. The problem with the assets that were created for this game is that they also don't fit the art direction of either games that they've ripped assets from. They also just didn't fit the actual aesthetic of the things that they're meant to be updated versions of. The maps have this really ugly look to them that I can't really say what they remind me of, but it's not Halo, and that's what matters. The way I always felt about Halo CE is that it feels like a game that's been modded to have Halo assets put over it, because nothing in this game looks like it's meant to be there. Even the environments just feel like they've been taken from an asset pack or something. There's a fucking fly, man, that keeps going around my microphone. Even without the actual designs of the environments, just the sheer tone is different to the original game in this remaster. Where CE was vibrant and cool, CE Anniversary is desaturated and warm to the point that what was lush and green is now dull and brown. Where CE was dark and creepy, CE Anniversary is well lit and almost inviting looking. The thing with Combat Evolved is that it's old and outdated, but it's old enough to be charming because it has an art direction that perfectly complements the graphical limitations it was made under. Combat Evolved Anniversary is now also old and outdated, but it was made in a time period where the graphics had already progressed too far to be charming by today's standards, but not far enough to hold up either. So it's just old and outdated now. Another change they made was to the cutscenes, and this is what hurts the most because while I'm not actually a huge fan of the remaster of Halo 2's actual gameplay, I get rock hard whenever I watch the remastered cutscenes. But CE Anniversary couldn't even get that right. Where Halo 2 Anniversary went for a fully rendered cinematic approach, with the cutscenes being gorgeously remade with photorealistic textures and lighting, CE Anniversary went for the original game's real-time in-engine approach with the cutscenes. Only now, the characters would no longer be animated by hand, and were instead done with motion capture. Xbox 360 era motion capture. There are some moments where it's just passable, but there's no moments where it's good, and there's plenty of scenes where it looks janky and almost reminiscent of that one single clip I've seen of the movie Food Fight.
That was a perfectly good bag of chips.
Survival of the fittest, lad.
I mean, just look at Captain Keyes. Motherfucker looks like he's going to Captain Key his boyfriend's car if he ever breaks up with him. Another problem with the new assets is that they don't all line up with the original game. Remember, the only thing that they've remastered are the visuals, The physics and boundaries of those visuals are still tied to that of the original games. This means you could walk straight through a tree or a rock because that tree or rock wasn't there in the original game, and therefore there's no collision boundary attached to it. Another thing they ruined in the remaster is the sound mixing. This part in particular especially gets on my nerves because I've got a background in sound design, but I've never actually done any industry work in that field. So it completely baffles me how people who do it for a living produced this and thought there was nothing wrong with it. For an example, let's compare both versions of one of the greatest scenes in cinema.
Come here, you mother... Oh, this is it, baby. Hold me. Come here, you mother... This is it, baby.
The sound mixing is so fucking terrible in remaster that you can hardly hear the first half of his sentence because of how loud the explosion is now. And the second half is just drowned out altogether to the point where you can't even tell what he's saying without the subtitles turned on, and so it just completely kills the comedy of the scene. But yeah, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary is, in my personal opinion, the laziest and ugliest remaster of any game I've ever seen, and the people who made it should be embarrassed by it. I mean, fuck me, they didn't even bother to remaster the multiplayer.